Hello, myself Sunil Ramakrishnan, and here basically we discussed that what actually the attraction is basically. In attraction basically we actually discussed lots of things basically. In this basically we discussed that the particular person's next generation is supposed to go or not supposed to go. For that basically we told that we have basically created we the system basically, that is basically the groups basically who handles the world basically. They told that they have created many systems basically. For that basically they have created in India basically they have created Congress basically has created BJP, Aam Aadmi Party, Samajwadi Party. These all basically groups basically they are created basically. They gets used as per the time basically. So government basically says that we are basically handling the entire country. So like this basically we just saw that also basically that how basically the one colleges basically say that basically we are doing the institute, we are basically training the people, and basically their brains basically we are developing. We are telling that this person is going to go up to this level because he basically got this many percentage, and after this many percentage basically he will 100% going to touch to this energy basically, and he 100% is going to change the idea roadmap basically, which is basically created from the certain universities basically. They basically has created the roadmap of the brain thinking basically. So few professor basically say up to that level that basically this person is going to change the entire roadmap of the thinking basically. That's roadmap basically, that basically everybody knows that. For example, one university told that basically we have created 300 cities so that our education basically should go smoothly, and the person basically who are thinking up to the certain level basically they can think up to the good level basically. So that are basically the ideas basically. So ideas basically are equal to infrastructure also basically we can see, and this is basically created long before. One more example of the idea basically we can tell, for example, SAP company basically. SAP company basically just launched in 2004 or 5 I think in India basically. But SAP companies basically, the SAP softwares basically creation, that is basically the infrastructure basically, that was started basically in 1972 73 basically. So it took actually 40 more than 40 years to just to create the infrastructure so that the SAP software can be launched. After that, basically the SAP software basically launched. So first, basically the infrastructure got created, the energy basically group basically verified each and everything. Then only basically the software gets creates basically. So here basically, if anybody says that this, so due to this software basically the energy problem basically got created, then basically you should tell this basically the SAP basically was created, that infrastructure when it was created basically, that time basically you are not supposed to check that. They basically literally the answer is supposed to be like this basically. If anybody says that due to this software basically the problem has basically occurred, so this basically this all why this basically are supposed to be no, because it might possible that in future basically big problem occurs basically, then basically nobody is supposed to blame to the software companies basically. That's why basically the data science group basically here basically the data science basically project basically came into the picture basically. Due to this reason might be the reason basically, because the data is basically very crucial basically nowadays basically, that if particular person is telling that basically due to this the error basically has occurred in the environment, so basically they can easily able to produce that this the before software basically the infrastructure basically was created. Now basically here the question basically one person asked that now infrastructure is created, the infrastructure is not going to change. Then the answer basically told that the one Harvard University person basically he was basically getting 90 percentage, and that example basically I have given. Then basically connected to one of the software company, and then basically connected to one software basically creation basically, which the software company actually got, and they basically create told that basically you have to create this banking project, and then like this basically the bank equal to product, and like this basically from banks change the basically they connected to the World Bank, and then basically the he connected to the World Bank, and then basically he joined the World Bank, and then basically in World Bank basically he created one product basically. That product actually changed the structure of the Harvard University thinking basically. So that basically the structure of the Harvard University basically told that basically they created a few more buildings basically in the Harvard University ideas basically. That was basically the Harvard University's education's idea basically. So like this basically the infrastructure basically was changed. So this infrastructure basically I'm talking, if SAP company says that basically if infrastructure is getting changed, going to be changed, then basically the SAP software groups are only going to change. That is basically the developers, the managers, the directors, the CEOs, vice president, the company owner basically by default, if he takes the initiative. But basically by default, SAP company are directly connected with each and every SAP employee basically. So they basically keeps on watching the each and every employees basically, that basically which employees basically thinking up to that level, that basically they don't diagnose the particular person's PC. They basically see the log file basically which generates in the software basically. For example, one person is doing the SAP creation, then basically they say the log file basically is keep the track of the particular up to what level basically the person is basically is thinking. So like this basically in Word basically there is no log file basically, that was particular person, particular project manager is thinking and up to what level basically he is thinking. So like this basically the things are basically there. So these all are basically connecting to what, these all are basically by default the connecting to next infrastructure basically. If next infrastructure basically is coming, then by default it's coming the next generation basically. So that basically the World Bank particular employee basically has created the next infrastructure, that is basically 4 to 5 buildings basically. That idea basically is going to say that basically which person is basically going to go next, which group is basically which group of person basically is going to be in next generation, and which group basically person is not going to be in next generation. So basically whenever the infrastructure basically gets creates, that time basically these all things basically are by default basically taken care, and these all basically are connecting to the you can next generation basically. So this like this way also basically the next generation which is basically getting created, that group basically who are basically into the next generation creation basically, they basically say that basically we have to use this 4 to 5 buildings also basically. Why? Because the next generation basically is getting created, the next generation basically getting created, next generation basically is going to create basically, you can say the next generation basically is going to create. So next generation basically you can say it's next generation basically. Next generation means but here the basically thing is basically the person basically who's those person only basically can go to next generation where basically a medical problem is not occurring basically. If medical problem is not occurring basically, then basically you can say that it's a next generation which basically is supposed to go and not supposed to. If he's having some next generation issue, then basically he basically his generation basically by default is not going to go. He need to do basically some medical treatment, each and everything basically he have to do basically. But if medical treatment also basically say that basically medical treatment also will not help basically, because he basically was basically forcefully done nasbandi by the certain groups, but then basically he basically can't do anything because his sperm is basically not going to generate the next generation count basically. So that is basically different topic. That is also basically a different topic, that basically connects to the totally connects to the medical department basically, who basically has done the nasbandi of that particular person and what was the reason behind that nasbandi, what was the basically reason behind that, and who basically given the idea which actually changed the entire universe basically, because his next generation is not going to go. So that all energy basically is not going to merge, because the people basically the universe group says that basically whose nasbanti has done basically, we basically don't take his energy in universe basically. So for example, one person's nasbandi was done in 2008. So currently it's 2023. So the till now basically whatever generations, whatever the energy basically was generated from his body, that was not taken by the universe group basically. So that much gap basically the of the energy basically is going to lack in the universe basically. So that basically is going to create problem, not going to create problem. That basically each and everything also basically is one of the subject basically, you can say, for the R&D group basically, because universe groups are basically creating the next generation. Universe groups are basically going to create the next generation. In universe basically next generation is the planet's creation. In earth planet next generation is going to have one baby, going to have one baby basically. So like this basically the next generation basically, next generation is going to happen or next generation is not going to happen. So this all basically things are basically connected by the certain level of groups basically, and this basically connects to the big level attraction basically. Big level attraction basically, if one person told that basically if one person Nasbandi has done basically forcefully, then basically in this basically certain groups are also basically connected. One person basically can't take the decision, right? So like this basically if this type of decision are taken, then basically it's an entire group basically. Assume that it's a 180 crore group basically, 180 crore groups are there basically. So like this basically 180 crore groups energy basically is generated in universe, and that single person basically energy was not generated in the universe basically. So that is basically the Nasbandi of earth planet definition. And universe definition is basically we have already discussed, because universe group says that basically we can't take the person energy basically whose Nasbandi is done. So that is basically different topic, that is totally different basically medical topic basically. That basically is medical groups problem basically, not that is basically the problem of doctors group basically. That doctors groups are going to suffer or not going to suffer, that basically future basically, future na? What actually future is, the medical doctor groups are going to suffer or they are not going to suffer, because the energy basically which was supposed to generate, that has not generated in universe basically. So this is also one of the topic basically, whose generation basically, whose, yeah, energies are basically taken and used in the universe, and whose energies are basically not going to take and not getting taken in the universe basically. And universe group basically blindly believe on which group? That is basically God group, Bollywood group, cricket group, political groups. This all are the basically the source of the universe group basically, because they have created it. Universe group has created this whole group basically. They have created basically so that their basically task is not supposed to go too much basically. They should basically blindly believe the this whole group basically. For that basically God group created, God family basically created, then basically the high court created, supreme court created, temple basically created, mosque created, church basically created. This there basically they all basically takes the decision basically. So blindly, basically, they have to believe this whole group basically, because they have created. Universe group has created it. So universe group only going to suffer because they have created it. They have created Parliament. They have created Bollywood. Bollywood basically it's in Mumbai city basically. They have created the Hollywood. Hollywood is in basically USA. They have created the United States of America. It's in USA. So they have created the next generation basically. So basically by default basically universe group basically will say that we have created, we are taking the responsibility of next generation, which is going to happen and which is not going to happen, which is going to happen and which is not going to happen. So which generation is going to happen and which generation is basically not going to happen, that is basically one topic. And in this basically topic basically it comes under attraction speed basically, how basically the things gets attracts basically, that how basically they takes the decision basically. This person basically generation is not supposed to go, this person basically generation is supposed to go, this generation is supposed to go, and this generation is not supposed to go. So basically how they takes the decision basically. So that basically is the topic basically, that basically we are discussing here. And here the one of the topic is attraction basically, and the attraction speed basically. This basically the decision which has taken, that was basically the attraction. So here basically we are talking about the attraction speed. And in attraction speed basically one topic basically we have taken, that is basically the next generation of this particular person. I had just taken as an example of myself, example I can take basically. So I had Taken as an example, basically, Sunil or Nair generation, next generation is going to be go, or it's not going to be go. So for that, basically, lots of groups basically created. Lots group basically it's basically bulk decision basically. Like this, basically, general things basically get created, and in this, basically, we have discussed that lots of systems basically are also created by the companies. Basically, one example I have taken of the education system, Harvard University. Basically, how Harvard University groups basically the one particular student basically connected to the 90 percentage, and 90 percentage, after 90 percentage he basically got one job in the software company, and in the software company basically got one project, that is basically the software company project, sorry, the banking project. In banking project he basically connected to banks. Told banks, the World Bank basically told that bank is equal to products, and the products are equal to basically city creation. Like this, basically the creation are there. Like this, basically the banks he connected to the World Bank, and then basically he joined the World Bank basically. And then World Bank basically he told that basically he's the employee of the World Bank, and then basically he told that basically he created one product. He basically got one creation of the product, and in this product creation basically he created one product, and in this product basically he created one new product basically, which basically connected to new ideas and new banking thinkings. And in this banking think basically the Harvard University basically tracked that new banking thinking, and in this basically he basically the Harvard University basically created 4 to 5 buildings basically. So the new 4 to 5 buildings basically was the ideas of the Harvard University, of the professor, of the students basically who are going to take the training of the each and every subjects basically. So like this, basically we have taken the example of this also, which is like this, basically many systems are basically created. So in next video basically we are going to see little bit more about this only.